I rank the 20 F1 drivers and how I think they will finish the 2023 season based on the first 8 races. Let's get right into it. Starting off the grid in P20, I've put Logan Sargent, the only American on the grid. Logan is a driver who I've been somewhat pleasantly surprised with. It's clear after these first few races that Logan has some raw pace in him. While yes, he's had a few shunts this year and a few mistakes during the races, he somewhat reminds me of a young Yuki Tsunoda back in 2021 and 2022. A driver who has shown some glimmers of pace, but who hasn't had time to develop all of the tools to put it together in a race. And yeah, while it's still very early to draw any conclusions about Logan or his performance, I believe that he has the time to become a successful F1 driver. In P19, I've put the former Formula 2 and Formula E world champion in Nick DeVries.
And I'm sure Nick DeVries didn't either, and when he hit the brakes, well, the rear end just went. Yeah,
It is no surprise that Nick has not performed to the expectations of himself or the team, with senior leadership stating that he's already been given the yellow card after only 6 races of the scheduled 23 this year. Some critics saying that at this current rate, he won't be on the grid next year. I'm not entirely confident in the junior champion's current abilities. In P18, I have Alexander Albon.
Alex, why are you actually wearing this? Because it was there. Oh, can I have my photo?
Now, Albon is a driver who fell from grace in 2020 after being rapidly promoted to Red Bull from AlphaTauri in his debut F1 season of 2019. Now, since Albon was ferociously outscored at Red Bull by the career killer that is Max Verstappen, he has raced in DTM with Red Bull and AlphaTauri, and now he races with Williams in F1. Alex is easily the team leader at Williams, and I believe that he will comfortably outscore his rookie teammate in Logan Sargent. In P17, I have Kevin Magnussen.
Prøver på ledbanen. Once again, vores unsportive driver saved my balls. Yeah, they're really good, man.
Kevin was a driver I think many people rallied around, fan or foe, after his brilliant performance in qualifying last year in Sao Paulo. For those that aren't aware, Kevin was driving a Haas, which at one point was second to last in the Constructors' Championship and ended up finishing 8th out of 10 at the end of the year. While his teammate Mick Schumacher was the slowest driver in Sao Paulo, putting the car at P20 on the grid, I put the same car on pole position, which was an absolute masterclass from the Danish driver. However, that's all there really is to say about Kevin of recent, and that was last season and 10 races ago. Now he is currently being outscored by a man who is older than him and who hasn't had a permanent race seat since 2019. Whoa. Before we continue, I can see that you guys are not subscribed, which means you can't see when I post new videos. If you're interested in Formula 1 content, don't forget to like and subscribe and turn on the notifications. In all seriousness, this is a brand new channel and every bit of support is greatly appreciated. Back to the predictions. In P16, I've got Joe Guanyu.
Hey, yo, the pizza here. Ooh, that brother's floating in the air. How could his hands do this? Oh, someone get him out the air.
I personally don't have much to say or much of an opinion about Joe. He seems like a fairly competent driver and not at all the pay driver that some expected him to be like, such as a Latifi or, as some would say, maybe a Stroll. And I don't feel that he's like either of them. While Joe seems fairly competent, it's still very early. It's the second year on the grid. I still believe he has a lot of learning to do before possibly surpassing his teammate in Valtteri Bottas. Speaking of, Valtteri is the man I have in P15. He currently only has 4 points in the Drivers' Championship. Now for reference, this time last year, Bottas had 40 points to his name, which was 10 times more in the championship. The Alfa Romeo is not currently a very competitive car, and while it's early to say, I feel like Bottas maybe has lost some of his former form. In P14, I've put Nico Hülkenberg.
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 Sag's mal ein bisschen männlich.
Hey.
Hülkenberg.
Hülkenberg.
Genau.
Nico Hülkenberg. Nico Hülkenberg.
Nico is a driver I never thought I would see on the grid again in a full driving capacity after Haas replaced him originally in 2019. However, Nico in one lap is an absolute monster in that Haas and is known for being pretty strong and consistent over a race distance. Nico is a driver that I can feel confident in saying that he will last at Haas for the rest of his driving career. In P13, a driver who I'm a really big fan of is Yuki Tsunoda.
We need to meet quite early for training.
Training? Why?
Why? Because it's not a rest day.
What are we gonna do? What are we gonna film tomorrow?
Filming's in the evening, but in the morning we're training with Franz on the beach.
No, I won't. You can go.
No, you have to come. Franz organised it.
No, really?
Yeah, mate. We're not training tomorrow morning.
Also known as the Pocket Rocket. Despite my favor of Yuki, I've been pleasantly surprised with him in his recent form. It's Yuki's third season in F1, and coincidentally his third season with AlphaTauri. And with the departure of his former teammate, Pierre Gasly, Yuki's really stepped up to the plate and led that team, when nobody really expected him to. Barring the dry-wet race in Monaco, Yuki has finished either 10th, 11th, or 12th in every race, perhaps being the most consistent driver this season. And he's been consistently outperforming his teammate in the F2 and Formula E world champion, Nick De Vries, and he's also been outperforming his F1 car. That AlphaTauri is an absolute boat, with the performance probably equal to a Williams at the back of the grid. In P12, I have the new resident Aussie on the grid, in Oscar Piastri.
Oi, don't say that. That's not true. That's not true.
Oh, I must.
Are you having a laugh as well? Because I don't want to hear it.
Stephen, I must
You
be
say that
mistaken.
again, I will freak out, I promise.
I must be mistaken. Okay.
Who I actually think is doing pretty well in his rookie season, all things considered. I think his performances speak for themselves. As it currently stands, he is not far off Lando Norris' teammate, who's at his 4th year in the team, and is known being a very quality racing driver. I do still believe that Piastri is still a fairly unproven talent over a season, and I favor the French drivers to maintain and possibly extend their current points lead over the young Aussie. However, I do feel like Piastri is a special driver and is one to be watching for years to come. In P11, I have Sir Lancelot.
7 poles in his career for Charles Leclerc. What a special pole this would be as he comes to the line now, crosses it and moves. What has happened? We need to know who's going to come out in front as we see Lance Stroll hitting the barrier and going over the curb one more time.
Or Lance Stroll, a man who has been convincingly beat every single year he has driven in an F1 car, barring 2018, where he finished P18 in the championship against Sergei Sorokin at Williams. Lance currently has nearly 1/3 the championship points as his teammate in the 2-time world champion Fernando Alonso. Lance, who started the season with multiple injuries in his wrists and feet, initially surprised me when he wasn't too far off the pace in Bahrain. However, since the season opening, Lance has been struggling at Aston against Alonso. So much so that there are critics calling for Lawrence Stroll to find a new driver for the team. And with the Alpines and Norris close behind, I think Stroll will begin to slip down the Drivers' Championship order. In P10, I'm going to put Pierre Gasly.
In France, how are you feeling? Daniel Ricciardo.
Pierre Gasly!
E alla fine c'era il ancora. You're getting better every time.
Pierre is the driver who has surprised me in the beginning of the season with a point-scoring finish in his first race outside the Red Bull family in F1, and again, it was in Bahrain. However, he has only qualified in front of Esteban twice in 7 races, despite only having a 10-point gap to him in the championship. Pierre is a driver who has displayed some remarkable pace in the Alpine, and I believe he will be a driver to look for in the next couple of years, similar to Oscar at McLaren. In P9, I have Lando Norris.
Oh, this is what we want. Lando, that collision did not help you. Daniel Ricciardo in the lead. Lando Norris has stacked it down the main straight. Here comes Ricciardo. It's going to be...
the McLaren is an absolute brick on the track. I believe that with the recent upgrade package and their planned package for either Austria or Silverstone, that both of their cars will be capable of some serious pace and be quite competitive going forward. Apparently this package is supposed to serve as their new foundation for future developments, and I believe Zach Brown and Andrea Stella when they say that this is a new start for the team. Coming in P8, I've put Esteban Ocon.
Esti's on the podium, baby!
Esteban is a driver who I feel has somewhat gone under the radar in terms of value. After his P3 podium in Monaco, he has been on every step of the podium in less than ideal machinery. He's also been with Alpine for going on 3 seasons now, since the French team was still branded as Renault. And he's also now, in many people's eyes, the de facto leader of that team. And I fully believe that Esteban will pass Lance in the standings by the end of the season and easily secure P8 in the Drivers' Championship. In P7, I have the first Spaniard on the list, in Carlos Sainz.
Unbelievable drive, P20 to P4.
I cannot believe it. As simple as that. Wow! What do you think? Do you think that was a smooth operator?
Smooth operator.
I think that was the smoothest operation of my life.
Despite Sainz's penalty in Australia for colliding into the back of the Aston Martin of Fernando Alonso, shown promising consistency and capability in the Scuderia. So far, outscoring his teammate in Charles Leclerc, there is just something that irks me about Sainz and Ferrari's strategy that doesn't have me confident that he'll keep his relative form against Charles. I feel like that by Silverstone, the tide will turn to Charles's favor and he will begin to claw back the points gap between the two. In P6, I've put the man who won the championship in the same year that I was born, and that being Fernando Alonso. Now, I've said that I don't back Aston Martin to keep up with the front runners over the 2023 season before, and it's something I will say again. Aston Martin are still redeveloping their facilities in Silverstone and are still developing championship contending facilities. They do, however, have an upgrade package coming to Canada in a few days, and that will be the first real test to see whether they can maintain the pace of upgrades alongside Mercedes, Ferrari, and Red Bull. However, for now, I'm going to remain with my convictions in the fact that I think Fernando Alonso will begin to slip down the order due to Aston Martin not being able to maintain a decent position in the car performance. In P5, I have the man from Monaco, Charles Leclerc.
I am stupid. I switch off everything.
Charles is a driver who we all know who's absolutely rapid on his day, but that's just it. The SF23 is a dog compared to the Red Bull this season, and even the Mercedes and Aston Martin in certain cases. Another variable of Charles' apparent poor performance so far this year is the fact that he's DNF'd twice in the first 3 races alone. 2 circuits where he was a pole sitter and a race winner last year. All this being said, for some reason, possibly delusion, I have some misguided confidence that over the course of a season, Ferrari will out-engineer it now, outpace the rest of the grid. I feel like Charles will start to gain grip again, like I said, in Silverstone, maybe Austria, and I feel like he'll start to climb the championship ladder.
George Russell is the type of guy who reacts to George Russell is the type of guy tweets. Here we go. At Ryanair, George Russell is the type of guy who claps when the plane lands. I mean, you got to show your appreciation to these people, so I am that type of guy. George Russell is the type of guy to slap his thighs and say, right, before getting up to leave your house. I think I definitely am. I'm like, right, let's get out of here.
Barring a DNF apiece, the Mercedes boys didn't finish lower than P4 from Canada to Zandvoort in 2022. Mercedes has been very consistent in pace in the middle of the season last year, and I feel like that is well reflective of the pace they may have this year. And with Ferrari not having the start that they had last season by winning the first couple of races, I find that the door has been left open for Mercedes to really secure and dig in that P2 in the Constructors' Championship, and I feel like it'll allow the Mercedes boys to secure P3 and 4 for Lewis and George respectively. The reason I say this is because I feel that Hamilton is more interested in being competitive against George this year, and therefore more motivated to maintain and grow his lead against his younger counterpart. This is because he hasn't taken on as much of a testing role this year with Mercedes, opting for the most competitive race package on Sunday. Last year, during the races, he was taking on more of a testing role, testing out new packages and new setups for the car just to gather data. But now with Mick Schumacher in that testing role, I feel like he's been able to take a step back and focus more on his race pace. In P2, I've put Checo.
Some corners cut turn 1 on the inside. Say that again? On turn 1?
Yeah, turn 1, first lap of the race.
Yes.
Some drivers just went completely almost on a pit exit.
I would think that was to avoid getting involved, no?
First one was Perez, I think.
Is that right, Checo?
Yeah. Basically,
well, exactly. I would have thought that was a reasonable reaction. Sorry?
there was a lot of spray as well.
Yeah.
I think if I stay there, I will have contact with Bottas. I have no more space to go.
Right. Well, I'll certainly have a look at it, but it wasn't raised. It wasn't raised to us during the race, so.
I think going into turn 2, he was ahead of me in the straight.
Okay. Well, like I say, we tend to rely on your teams telling us that something's happened. It happens all the time. He overtook on the safety car. I've got to be a
Now this is very interesting because Checo's won the other 2 of the 7 races this year, both in Saudi Arabia and Azerbaijan. However, his recent consistency in the Red Bull is a little bit questionable. In the last 2 races, Checo hasn't made it out of Q2. These 2 European performances paired with his qualifying DNF in Australia don't give me a whole lot of confidence in his ability to hold P2 in the championship. All this being said, the gap to Lewis and Russell are still 30 points and 57 points respectively, and I find it hard to believe that either Sergio or that Red Bull car will fall off that hard in respect to Mercedes or anybody else on the grid for that matter. But then again, anything can happen. And then lastly, the driver who I think is going to win the championship this year should come to the surprise of nobody when I say I believe that Max Verstappen is as good as clear of the rest of the field.
Speaking of Dutch, hey.
Having already won 5 out of the 7 races so far this season, he's well clear of P2 by over 50 points. That Red Bull is far and away the fastest car on the grid, and in the hands of Max, it should be no surprise to anybody that I've put him down for winning his 3rd Drivers' Championship, which would be tying himself with the likes of Nelson Piquet, Niki Lauda, Ayrton Senna, Jack Brabham, and Sir Jackie Stewart. But yeah, guys, those are my predictions for where I think the drivers will be at the end of the season. If you had all enjoyed, please don't forget to like and subscribe. This is a very new channel, and the support would really be appreciated. Having said all that, thank you for watching, and have a great day. I rank the 20 F1 drivers and how I think